but also we do our 4 affirmations. And so I'd like the guys, y'all know what to do. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. And number 4. All right. The time has come for us to stop looking for others outside our community to rebuild those communities. We must raise up supermen and women to take back our communities and provide them with direction and vision. No one's going to do it for us. We've got to do it. We've got to do it.
Three homicides in one weekend are keeping Kansas City, Missouri police busy tonight.
There was some poverty maps of Kansas City, and you could trace the higher levels of poverty straight down Troost Avenue. This was just done last year.
Police say 31-year-old Darnell Pearson was murdered outside his apartment building.
It is a mess. We can't have a part of our city, a big part of our city, where the population density is half of what it is west of Troost Avenue. That is not sustainable.
People believe that the closer you get to Troost, the more violent life becomes.
Last night's deadly shooting of one of his employees and also a friend crushed his good intention.
It's amazing. It's like 2 different cultures are living side by side. One is successful, the other not so successful.
Disinvestment means that there's a gap. If you want to gain on and close that gap, you have to do extraordinary things.
Just as police were called to that shooting last night.
I'm tired of murders. I'm tired of robberies. I'm tired of kids getting chased home. People trying to pick them up off school bus. I can't even take my kids. I have to take them to the bus stop.
The struggle that's happened within our culture and within our American history regarding racism and prejudice is well known, but there are certain cities that sort of highlight this more than others, Kansas City being one of them. We suffer from hyper-segregation.
Troost has always had the stigma of being a dividing line. In fact, when I was running for mayor, I used to say that people treated Troost like some form of demilitarized zone.
When you have a demilitarized zone, it's where 2 opposite armies have decided this is where we're going to have a truce at. And so usually the demilitarized zone is very barren.
This entire metropolitan area should care about the heart of our city, or Troost Avenue, and what happens east and west of it. We all say we're from Kansas City, and Kansas City, Missouri is the core of that heartbeat, I would say. And if such a huge part of Kansas City, Missouri is ailing the way it is, it really does affect the entire area.
It's very clear that every suburb has to be a suburb of somewhere. Kansas City is somewhere. When people leave here and they're asked where they're from, 99 times out of 100 they say Kansas City. Kansas City is the center of this region. I'm not saying that from an egotistical standpoint. It's simply a geographic, financial, cultural, athletic reality.
We just cannot isolate poverty and expect that we've moved away from it and it's not our problem. It is our problem. And for us to have children that grow up in unsafe environments and we're breeding ignorance and fear and another generation of violence, it is our problem.
One of my biggest heartbreaks has been the inability, and one of the reasons I work so much on Troost right now, even though I'm supposed to be looking east and west, I'm moving a lot north and south because it is a freaking wall. And I've had a hard time being able to help people think about going east of Troost in their investments and their developments.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question about crime. I'm a true believer in the actual Troost area. I was also born and raised here as well. And I chose to be on Troost. I didn't end up there.
I opened Barbershop 67 at 3402 Troost. I wanted to open a business within the urban core, specifically in an area that was underserved. But on November 16th, things just changed for the worse.
A business owner hoping to breathe new life into an East Side neighborhood is now mourning the loss of his employee and friend.
People come into your life and they are there for a long time and they make a huge impact, and sometimes they come into your lives and they're there for a short period of time and they have just as powerful an impact.
Although police have not released his name, Craig says it was Joe Jackson, who had only worked there a month. Craig hasn't given up on the area. He's keeping his business open.
Because of what happened on that night, as a business owner, you have to make some tough choices. So when those dollars dry up, it can deliver a serious blow. And to make a business decision, as difficult as it was, I decided that closing the business was really all I could do.
I do believe that from our city government, from our city officials, just those in general, and just the population of Kansas City, we have to, look at crime, and specifically crime in areas where it is the, highest, as a severe problem.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have comments on that?
Yeah, I do. There is a distrust of police and citizen that has existed in this city for quite some time. Fortunately, there is a police chief who is doing everything that he can to break that down, and so am I. I agree with you, Craig. I know exactly where your shop was. You worked very hard in the campaign. I've been to your shop. I've been to that street many times. But stopping crime isn't something that you do with the snap of a finger, and it's multifactorial, and you're not going to stop the crime until you address the root problems of the crime. And we have done a poor job, not just here, but in every other city in this country, of addressing the root causes of crime.
We're going to have this problem until it becomes a citywide problem. And until we embrace this as one city and not just say, well, it's them folks. It isn't them folks. We live in one city. And until we embrace that concept, we're going to continue to have bigger challenges than that.
I grew up in Kansas City, and I went through the public schools of Kansas City, which is why my heart bleeds when I think about where we are now. Well, I started out my childhood living on 24th Terrace, just off of Vine Street. And I remember 31st and Troost had a look much like Brookside, with lots of little individually owned shops, but then some big anchors as well. And it was a vibrant area.
If you go back and look at the history of Kansas City and its development, you will find that there were a number of public policies that were put into place that really created the economic racial barrier that we have in Troost Avenue. And these were set by, our community leaders at the time, where our kids could go to school based on the color of their skin, where people could live or work based on the color of their skin.
The teens in the 20s, one of our great local heroes is J.C. Nichols, who was the head of the real estate board in the nation, but started here in Kansas City. And he had planned one of the first shopping malls, an outside mall called the Plaza, the Country Club Plaza, which was based on Seville, Spain. It was a beautiful spot, still is. But what people are unaware of is sort of the dark side, was that he also had come up with this idea of racially restrictive neighborhood associations. And so these neighborhood associations had that they could only have in their association or homeowners association people of the white race. Troost was not always that way. It was originally a trail that wove back and forth along this area to the Missouri River, where the Osage people would take their canoes to the Missouri River.
My ears took heed to our corner today, motor cars and buses heard, but as mind from heart began to pray, echoes of distant times emerged. Soldat du Chien and Osage trails, weaving and leaving their footprints soft, oak leaves swishing by the tails of gentle deer en route to trough. Balanced, peaceful, and serene, each moving at their pace, man and beast, flora, fowl, all could sense a kind of grace, until the wheels of iron broke the silence of the ancient place.
To have someone come from the nation to actually represent the Osage people, where we want to publicly acknowledge the pain that's been caused from their displacement and invite them to continue to participate with us in rebuilding community on Troost.
The vision that we saw for this corner included a village concept. Inherent in that was an understanding that there's a deep history here. And so what brought me here was an invitation by Father Paisius to attend and provide input from the American Indian community on the vision for Troost, and particularly this block.
The Osage land became prime real estate. So in the 1880s, what they had developed eventually became known as Millionaires Row. So that by around 1910, 1915, this corner ended up becoming like a business district, until by 1922 there was actually 186 businesses here within 2 blocks. That's when Walt Disney began his work. So from the 20s until the late 40s, everything was going along that way. But in the birth of the civil rights era, when you had the call to desegregate the schools, in 1954 you had Brown versus Board in Topeka.
I was in grade school when integration of the schools came about. And change, and particularly this kind of change, the potential of the races being in school together, which some folk were afraid would lead to social interaction, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of fear, and there were people who took advantage of that. There's a term called blockbusting, and there were a lot of realtors who would literally knock on the doors of white people who lived in the urban core and say to them, did you know that a black family moved in down the street from you? And in some instances, it was blatant. In others, there were inferences made that this was going to be detrimental to property values, to personal safety, the whole bit. So this was spurred by the integration of schools. And it was also spurred by housing legislation, which said that a person could move wherever they could afford to live.
Every city in America had a district like 18th and Vine because of segregation. The blacks in those cities still needed services. And when you are segregated, then they have to come from within. And then as integration came, folks could put businesses anywhere. What ends up occurring is that those who can leave.
And so if you had essentially middle class and above, you had working class, middle class and above, white people, and they left. And then you had middle class black people and above who left. Who was left then were people who could not really financially support, or at least that's the way the businesses felt. And so they left. And this is where the term disinvestment comes from.
Avarice and greed once more did hide behind the guise of safety and pride. Realtors, bankers, insurance, and school together built apartheid's rule. Fear was cast on black and white, quickly moved to make it right. Blacks go east and whites go west. Of Troost wealth we must divest. In the wake of fortunes made, a ghost town felt so void of trade. A stigma, a byword, a place of woe. Who can change this status quo?
It wasn't until 2003 that Governor Blunt issued an order to take out the racially restrictive language from the neighborhood associations. So it's like, we often have this idea, this idea of racism and prejudices way back then. I mean, look at all that we gained in the 50s and the 60s in the Civil Rights Movement. But in Kansas City, and especially along Troost Avenue, we've come to realize that that is very much just a beginning point. There's a lot of work to do.
People talk about the lack of resources in these communities. These communities have tremendous resources. The problem is we're not allowing them to use them.
Martin Luther King had talked about this idea that it's not just helping the man on the side of the road and the Good Samaritan, but actually also dealing with eventually we're going to have to deal with the thieves that keep robbing people along the road from Jerusalem to Jericho.
We know that an average person who goes out into the city, in the metro area, can gather at least 35 signatures in about an hour, or about 2.5 hours, and that's about how long you're going to be out.
We're a faith-based community organizing network located in the urban core of Kansas City, and we work with about 40 congregations throughout the metro on quality of life issues. One of the longest running issues that we've been working on since 1998 is this issue of payday loans, payday lending reform. Our residents in just Kansas City are paying $26 million every single year in interest alone. So that's money that's just buying debt. Right? It's not money that's contributing to the local economy. It's not producing goods or services. It's not, contributing to sales tax. It's debt.
Now, how can a community with no resources provide $25 million in profit to a predatory industry? So it's not that we don't have resources, it's that we're spending them badly.
I remember telling a friend about it. He says, I can't believe you took a payday loan. I mean, he looked at me like I had cancer or whatever, but I said, I didn't rob anyone. But then when I said that statement, I thought right away, well, I had just been robbed, legally in broad daylight. To pay that kind of interest rate is just absurd.
Kansas City is unique in that it was really one of the two birthplaces of payday lending. When we look at how did payday loans emerge nationally and also specifically locally as a problem, it's really one side of a two-sided coin. The other side being traditional mainstream banking disinvestment from a lot of low-income communities. So throughout the 1980s, you saw significant banking deregulation under the Reagan administration. And as a result of that, you saw a lot of small community banks combine into large corporate entities that we know really well now, like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase. And as they did that, they typically pulled up shop in some of the low-income communities. So at the same time, in places like Tennessee, where Advance America was starting, and in Kansas City, which is the birthplace of QC Holdings, which we typically know on the street as Quick Cash, well, they could go to state legislatures, they could go to the Missouri General Assembly and say, hey, look, these banking deregulations have really created a flight of capital from low-income communities. And the only way to serve subprime borrowers is to charge them higher interest rates. They're risky clientele. And in doing so, in making that argument, the payday lenders were very, very successful in all but destroying the usury laws in the state of Missouri. So historically, there was a cap on all lending products in the state of Missouri at 28% APR. And that was our usury law, meaning anything higher than that is usurious. It is outside the realms of what is moral or legal. In the state of Missouri, we eliminated almost all limits for payday lenders, and it wasn't until 2002 we had any limit put into place. That effective limit in the state of Missouri on a payday loan is 1,950% APR.
Y'all, can we finish up real quickly in large group? Thank you. We're trying to use the tool of the initiative petition process to build power for something we haven't been able to get our legislators to build power for. So throughout the entire state of Missouri, we need to gather 240,000 signatures, which is like a scary number, right? But we know that there are pockets of people all over the state that are gathering signatures on beautiful Saturdays like this, just like us. And we have some math that proves our power and that proves that what we're doing today can work and can get this on the ballot.
Missouri doesn't have campaign contribution limits. It doesn't have limits on lobbying. The payday lending industry is one of the largest lobbies in the entire state. And we knew that the game was rigged and that we needed to work outside of that game if we were going to be able to achieve real reform for our people. And so we began researching the idea of a ballot initiative. And we found that this was overwhelmingly supported by the public, that almost 3/4 of folks would support a strong interest rate cap on payday loans in the state of Missouri. And so we brought a lot of people of faith together, and we brought labor groups together, and we brought grassroots groups together, and we brought community groups and social service agencies together, and we said, wouldn't we be a lot better off if there was a 36% APR cap on payday loans? And the Cap the Rate initiative was born from that.
So I'm an Irish Catholic kid who now sits at the feet of a lot of great Baptist preachers and Kojic preachers in this town. And one thing that we are most inspired by in our work is the scripture from Ezekiel. So really briefly, there's this prophet Ezekiel, and he goes to the valley, and it's full of dry bones, and he's like, what bones? What can I do with this? And he hears the word of God, and he begins to speak to those bones, and the bones begin rattling, and they begin shaking in this valley that's been barren for decades, for centuries, forever. And the bones begin to come together and form sinews and flesh, and they rise up as a vast army. And that is Ezekiel's army, and that is what we're trying to build in Kansas City.
This issue is important to me as a member of this community, that I know that predatory lenders are seeking out predominantly African American and Latino communities where it's difficult for people to find conventional banking or lending products that they are being preyed upon here.
Well, the average person who does not have $300 today is not going to have $351 in 2 weeks, and the payday lenders know that. This product was designed for folks to fail.
Transaction was so quick, quite honestly, there was no discussion on the interest rate. It was just specifically told the amount that was due, in the time frame that it was due. I discovered the interest rate, and that was negligent on my part by not looking at that thoroughly, but when you need the cash, you just kind of go. I knew I had to get that paid off pretty quick because I did not want that hanging over my head.
So the industry is going to pull a lot of tricks to try to keep us from getting to the ballot in the first place. So that includes lawsuits, that includes opposition tactics, that includes fake petitions that they're circulating in the streets.
Do you know which one you signed for? Because I have to say there are a couple of competing petitions that are out here.
I'm not sure. All I know is it was the lower the rates, the loan rates on the...
It was probably a competing one where the payday loan industry is trying to deceive people.
It might have been. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I can't tell you, man.
The payday industry, in an effort to distract potential voters, have offered up several competing ballot petitions themselves. The intention is not to actually place these on the ballot, but it is just to take away from the potential number of signers who believe they've already signed.
So, a law firm based in Texas that was hired by Missourians for equal credit opportunity, which we don't know where their money comes from Missourians for Responsible Lending, whose money comes from nobody knows where, but we assume it's the payday lenders, has raised over $1 million. And they hired this law firm in Texas to send letters to dozens and dozens of our churches and our congregations throughout the state of Missouri. And it was essentially a scare letter. It was a scare tactic. Tried to get our people out of the game. It told them by getting involved in political activity, they could lose their 501c3 status. And the funny thing was that this didn't scare too many of them. Anything, it made them really angry because they know that this work is living out the true meanings of their creed. And if they don't get involved and they don't act, they aren't being the moral people of faith in their communities that they know they're called to be. So the scare tactic didn't work. Yes, payday industry, the faith community is still leading the fight to cap the rate.
And when the payday lending industry heard that, they said, that's nice, y'all got some Bible verses, that's sweet. And they pat us little church folks on our head, and they weren't too worried. You know what they did? They sent us letters that said, you better be afraid, because you're wading into waters that you can't handle.
We won't be stopped by the deep pockets of the payday loan industry or their high-priced attorneys. Like Ezekiel the prophet said in the Bible, we prophesy and we breathe life in these dry bones.
We've been ignored, we've been insulted, we've been thrown off of properties, but because of this cause, we were not discouraged, we packed up and moved someplace else.
This strikes at the gut of your community. This strikes at the gut of the economic capacity of your community, and this strikes at the gut of your moral and your faith traditions, and that you can't stand idly by while we continue to be just ravaged in this way.
The other thing that we have to think about is that there's a difference between income and wealth. Wealth is built over generations. Income is something you receive as long as you're working or through investments. But wealth is something that's built over generations. In order for that to occur, somebody in a generation has to say, I am willing to sacrifice for those who are coming after me. The unfortunate thing in the Black community is that almost every generation has to start from scratch.
Operation Breakthrough came about by accident. Sister Carita and I came here in 1968, and those were the days that when they sent nuns places, you didn't have any choice. They said, next year you're going to Kansas City, so you went. And one day, a mom said, we need a place for our little kids. And we lived in this big old house, and we said, we could do that in our house. A lot of the struggles right now, they weren't so much true when we first came, is many of these children have very limited food resources at home. Many of them are homeless, either live in shelters or often in their mom's cars. Last summer, we had a mom that lived on a bus stop for a week with 2 kids. I mean, our kids live without the basics that we feel people need in order to exist. And it's not because their families aren't trying. It's just that the system's built against them. A young person is killed in a car wreck on 125th Street. The very next line in the newspaper is, there will be a counselor at the school to help the children deal with this person's death. I dare you to find that in a drive-by shooting. Is it because our kids are so used to the kid next to them being dead in the morning? Or is it we don't care enough? I mean, why? It should be the same thing. There'll be a counselor at the school. I dare you to find that line in the paper. It's never there. I had a foster child that was in my car one day. He had seen his mom's boyfriend kill his little sister. And we drove by a gas station. He was 4 years old. He was strapped in his car seat, and he said to me, if I grow up, I want to be a fireman. And 4-year-olds should say, when I grow up.
Children are part of an ecosystem. They do not drive their own cars, they do not live in their own homes, they do not buy their own food. If that ecosystem is toxic, then the results to those children are going to be toxic. 71% of all children in juvenile detention and long-term inmates, fatherless homes. 75% of high school dropouts, fatherless homes. 80% of children in drug and alcohol rehab, fatherless homes. Under slavery, more black children grew up with both parents than they do today. Now, slavery was a horrific tradition in America. Do not get me wrong. And I would no way condone it. But the fact still remains. And sometimes in order for us to move forward, we have to look in the mirror and look at some ugly truths.
And I am convinced if we could get many, many of these young men to finish grade school, finish high school, go to college, get a job, support their families, we'd all be out of business because there'd be no need for agencies like this. But we're a ways from doing that. We have to pay attention to these young guys, not just throw them in jail and say, oh, well, we've solved that problem.
Of the problem. See, a lot of folks didn't think that men needed help.
Yeah.
Oh no. They thought that once you reached a certain age, y'all knew what to do. That's what he wanted to have. Right. Dr. King's biggest fear was that after the dogs stopped biting, after they turned off the water hose, after the police stopped beating them, and the doors of opportunity were finally opened, that there wouldn't be people prepared to go through them. That is my concern as well. For those of you who don't know, the man class is it started out as a vision, as the mayor says. For those that don't know me, I'm a computer engineer by trade. I've been blessed to have learned a skill, to have made money. But I began to see around me a need. The need was there were males who didn't know how to be men. It wasn't that they didn't want to be men. But the thing of it is that we're born male and female. We learn how to be men and women. But in the absence of teachers, how do we learn? The man class is basically 12 sessions or lessons that a father normally would teach his son. Okay, so there are a number of different knots you can tie with the tie. Nobody wants to come and see a man locked up like an animal. Nobody likes that. That's why some folks won't even come see you, right?
I used to wonder why they be crying and stuff. I'm the one in here. I should be the one crying.
Well, no. Because you the one who said, I want to be here. So you don't get to cry, because you made the decision. Your crying days is over. Now, them other folks had nothing to do with it. They crying because they know that this was not what you were sent here to do. And it breaks their heart that you still choose to do it. That's the problem. See, they see in you what you don't see in yourself. See, we see ourselves as being these things. I'm the stick-up kid. I'm the dope dealer. I'm whatever. But the ones that love us don't see us like that, right? They get a vision of us that sometimes we don't see. So it breaks their heart when you choose this crazy stuff over the vision that is for your life. That breaks everybody's heart.
Yeah, I went to jail numerous times. I was a street guy, street kid, an older gentleman trying to play a young man's role out here. I was still on boy status. When I came in, I was already in school, but I was lollygagging in school. But when I got here and I got an understanding of what a man's supposed to do and what a man is, and how he conducts himself.
Right now we headed up to Penn Valley. I gotta drop off some homework.
It kind of got me on the right path of, more on my schoolwork and, just out here in general in life.
Right now I'm taking History 121 and we're discussing the slave trade. That's my #1 subject right there, history. Love history. It helps everything else come together.
And I'm trying to get on the same level as you.
Right.
I want to get back to the community.
Right.
And as far as do my part in that, and kind of same thing as you, accumulate jobs for other people.
Right.
I've been going to the Tuesday support class after I graduated the men's class, and Rodney got me the hook up on this job. Called me up, he said they need 3 positions and it'll be eventually go to permanent, putting in solar panels. And I'll find out more this Tuesday night at the next meeting.
Our community is suffering because males do not want to step up and be men. So I'm hoping and praying that things do change in my life and others as well.
Unfortunately, in this country, we've had a one-way conversation. And that conversation is that men in general, and fathers specifically, are optional in the lives of their children. What kind of man would take his wife, his woman, his children, his family out in the woods and leave them? One of the things I share with my men is that men do 3 things. They protect those they love, they provide for those they love, and they praise those they love. I tell them, the women who come into their lives should leave them better for knowing them, not broke, pregnant, and confused, as they are now.
These young ladies is laying down with different guys.
But, no.
They make that.
No. They are not having virgin births. They're not having virgin births. In other words, there is a man laying with them. No. You are those men. You are those men. These are not alien men that just pop up, boof, E.T., phone on. No. You cannot put this on them.
No, I wasn't putting it all on them at you didn't let me finish.
Sure is a fixer-upper. We're out here looking at this house out here on 57th and Euclid. I'm looking to buy this house. Looks like it's in fairly good condition. I'm gonna use this to open up our foundation. Use this as one of our houses for alternative kids and things of that nature. We're also trying to help out the ex-convicts that's coming out of incarceration. Try to see if we can find them a job, help them have a smooth transition back into society. Get some kids in here, help out, clean up, learn. They can learn skills, as far as working on the house. Yeah, I'm liking this here. It's got a lot of cleanup, but that's good for the kids and good for the community that's coming together, putting the project together.
These men realize something is missing. They're not sure what it is, but if you can provide them with what's missing, they get it. You guys are leaders. You guys are conquerors. You guys are warriors. Okay? But you won't be if you don't believe it. See, if every time a battle comes up, you go run and hide, well, you ain't no warrior, right? In your mind, you're a coward, but you're not. All you have to do is stand up to the first battle, and then you realize I'm a warrior. At this time, I'd like to call up another one of our graduates, Mr. DeLon Brown, who wants to speak for the graduates.
Discipline. Discipline
has always been the big thing for me. I don't like this so much. I've always had an issue with authority, with the law. I mean, just a security guard. I'm not even joking. If he had on a badge that was shiny, I didn't like it. My wife says, "What is your problem with cops?" I don't like them. Plain and simple. I don't like them. But Pastor Nero, really cool guy. I really like him. I didn't know the cat was a cop. I didn't know he was a cop. And from that moment on, that changed my perception of these cops. The issue isn't that I hate cops. The issue is that I've just simply become what's outside of these windows. I don't dislike cops because of what they do. I like them for what they do. Because at the same time, while they protect our communities, they protect you all from the old me.
I don't believe that lowering crime by any means is all left up to the police. When I've talked to my friends, some of them believe that in suburban areas that crime is the way it is because the people are white. And my argument is no, crime is lower because in those areas they don't stand for it. And sometimes within the urban core, we kind of have a live and let live mentality, almost like, well, and hey, that's what's going on down the street. But we fail to realize that down the street will eventually be you, and someone further up the block is going to say that's just down the street. So we have to take a more proactive, role in that, and not be afraid of what may happen, because whatever you are afraid of today, it will be worse if you do nothing.
How many of you work every day in or near or travel through the Troost corridor and as a part of your daily lives?
The people of the community absolutely have to be involved in their own future. They have to find the strength to believe that it can be better and to act upon it.
It is huge to have the neighborhoods and the affected community involved in redevelopment. We've seen it time and time again where an institution or a business has huge plans for an area, and even if it is their property, they will run up against resistance if they have not worked closely with the various neighborhood organizations, the adjacent neighborhoods.
This idea that someone's going to come in and fix our community is not based in any reality, in my opinion. Look at a relationship where one is giving and the other receiving. That is automatically an unequal relationship. The giver always stands over the receiver. And so what we've done is we've created this environment where those who receive think less not only of themselves, but of their community. How does that translate? It's translated in the fact that because my community is less, then I can throw trash. I don't have to pick up. I don't have to vote. I don't have to report crime. I don't have to do all of those things that make a community and a society function successfully. You men are the supermen who our communities have been waiting for. The time has come for us to stop looking for others outside our community to rebuild those communities. When a group comes from outside of the community, they don't know what the problems of that community are. For so many of the past decades, we have had folks come in and solve problems, but they've solved the wrong problems. In the sense of they came in saying, we know what your problem is and we're going to fix it. Well, what you do when you do that is you begin to devalue and dehumanize the folks who live in that community. What you're basically saying to them is that your gifts, your talents, your abilities, we don't need.
It's really recognizing that the people who live in these communities are absolutely the authorities on what these communities need.
The Green Impact Zone, it is a place-based initiative that has as its platform energy efficiency and environmental conservation, but it is led by the neighborhood leaders of 5 communities who said that the vision should deal with quality of life.
We did not set up a board for the Green Impact Zone. Our board is our neighborhood leaders. You come in and you say, what are you doing and what do you want? You don't come in and say, I'm here to help. You come in and you ask people, what are you guys doing? And what's your fondest wish? And what are you working on right now? And here's some resources that might be valuable to you. And you can see that that is a different approach than coming in and saying, I'm here to help, which is kind of a top-down sort of thing.
I think the days of waiting for government to solve all problems, whether it's city, state, or federal, are over.
I want to make sure that you understand that we're here to work.
The role of the mayor is to set the tone, tell the truth, and set priorities in conjunction with the city council. To then focus on those priorities in such a way that it affects the quality of life in a positive way. None of that is possible without a collaborative effort with the people who live in the city. And it's like anything else. If you want to collaborate with somebody, first thing you need to do is establish a relationship with them where they want to collaborate with you.
But I really like the idea of collaboration that you guys are talking about, and especially the individual emphasis. But I'm wondering, do you guys feel like there's any sort of obstacles in organizations collaborating?
The example I like to use is that let's say there's a group that believes that abused women need to have pink sweaters, that it will comfort them, make them feel good. Well, there'll be another group that comes along and says, well, no, we think blue sweaters are good. Now, rather than them two coming together and saying, let's both hand out pink and blue, the other one wants to start their own organization. And so what ends up happening is that, again, you've got 500 groups all doing the same thing and no one being very effective. I think the biggest obstacle is just this mentality of being in their own silo versus how do we reach across?
At least 10, 15 times a week, there's a group who comes to my office or to whose meeting I go that wants city help or involvement. I've eliminated some of my headaches and problems by asking one simple question, and that is, who are you collaborating with? Because if you're not collaborating with somebody, we don't have the money to fund 15 organizations doing the same thing, nor do we have the desire.
We're going to kick into some high-gear jazz, the best living jazz talent in Kansas City. David Bassey, Bobby Watson, and the mayor is going to MC. Brush Creek Community Partners is partnering with, so there are partnerships going on, folks, but partnering with the Green Impact Zone, and we're just going to have a blast.
In this past 10 years, there's begun a renaissance to begin to pull us together from, instead of thinking of Troost as a dividing line, we're now beginning to think of it as a gathering place, as a place where we can come together and find each other in music, find each other in arts, find each other in a common value that every person matters. Deliberately make a friend on the other side of Troost. Whatever side of Troost you currently find yourself on, deliberately enter into a relationship with someone on the other side of Troost. My wife recently passed. The whole experience that I've had around 31st and Troost, really much of that's emerged from the love that the two of us shared together. And I mention this because if it wasn't for her, there would be no way that I would be involved with what I'm doing right now. And I just say there's no substitute for the power of relationship.
You know when the spinach scare was on and you were going to die if you ate fresh spinach? Different people who are friends of the center, no big stores, just people who have families. During that period of time, in the 2-week period after that, we had 1,000 cans of spinach donated. Now, it scared me to death because, let me tell you, good people opened their cabinets. There was nothing wrong with canned spinach. We used every can. Good people opened their cabinets and said, this could hurt my family. I'll give it to them. Now, these are good people, right? But the them and us, when you're at parties, when you're with groups, there is no them and us. As long as there's a them and us, we'll have Troost dividing it.
God shed your grace on thee.
But oh, with the roses come the weeds. Must progress come with neglect of needs? Bias based on the color of skin. Who can know the subtleties of sin?
This is an individual, a lot of times I don't think that we always have a full understanding of who people are. And I went to school with Father David at Bishop Hogan High School a long time ago. But he went on to do something entirely different than what he's doing now, and he made a conscious decision to change his life and the lives of other people.
Father Paisius, who has been in this fight a lot longer than I have, I think has gone a long way in involving and integrating and bringing folks together to participate in this process.
Instead of it being one person's baby, it's like a whole bunch of people all of a sudden, almost at the same time, started realizing this is time, let's make this happen. In 2005, members of St. Mary of Egypt Orthodox Church and others formed reconciliation services, and part of our overarching vision is to change Troost from a dividing line to a gathering place. And so what we are doing is working at that, both with individuals as well as groups, and with this larger vision ultimately of creating an actual intentional sense of village on both sides of Troost, where people will learn to really pull together.
When people walk in the door, we give them the respect that they deserve. Everybody should get the respect and the honesty. We believe people, when they walk in, to give them what they need. So we treat everybody like their family, that this is your home and you're welcome in your home.
When we talk about reconciliation services, it actually, in many ways, started back in the mid-'80s.
We used to live in Leawood, Kansas, and prior to coming to 31st and Troost, I used to sell mutual funds and insurance, and there came a particular point where over at Linwood and Gillum, I met a man. His name was Rollin. He lived at a place called the LaSalle Apartments. And when I went to visit him, I found several people that hadn't eaten for several days. Another lady had a can of pork and beans on her table. And I knew enough of the Sermon on the Mount and enough of the Gospels that don't simply, says St. James said, peace be warmed and be filled and go on your way. And so as a result, I was struck by this reality. And what we thought was just going to be a little part-time food ministry ended up to be a change in the whole direction of my life.
think the most important thing that we've learned is that it's moving from this idea of charity to actually building community. And in that respect, one of the things that we've looked at is how are we going to change this for the long haul? And that brings us to this idea of village. In the prophet Jeremiah, it says in chapter 15, when you can extract the precious from the worthless, then you'll be my spokesman. And I think that's really our job in terms of village building, is to take a look at where we are and ask, what do we need to extract that's precious and hold on to that? And what do we need to let go of that's worthless or that's ugly or that's something that we don't want to further this kind of value or decision-making process?
Well, the Thursday night meetings have been going on as the Troost folks since the very first when we got started. And I had gotten asked by some people I had sent press releases out to, who are you, what are you doing? And I came up with, well, I couldn't just say we're a loose group of individuals who got together. That just didn't satisfy. So I said, well, we're the Troost folks. I like the idea that everybody is involved. I mean, we have a wide range of people that come to the meetings, participate. I like the idea that everyone has something to contribute, that we don't have to get our power from someplace else. We have all the resources and the energy right here that we can work with. And people just need to know that they can do that. They don't need to go find it from someplace else.
I was always raised to fear Troost as well. So I think this is very great that we are doing this. We're growing a community, and I guess that's what our theme is. So
we're the dangerous ones, aren't you?
In 2005, at the same time we started the agency, we started the first Troost Festival. And that Troost Festival was a gathering of people on a day in May to have a day of shutting down Troost and having a party. So we had blues, jazz, reggae, gospel, artists, community association people, and community groups, individual neighbors just having a good time all day long.
One May morning, clear and bright, neighbors gathered without fright. Instead of darkness, gloom, and night, they turned from fear to regain sight. They planted gardens, sang their songs, made a council to right their wrongs. From the ruins of racist pillage, there would emerge a new Troost village. With children's art and poets' song, all will know they do belong. Some will build and some will plant, some will teach and some will chant. From the strands of all these years, a new bright tapestry appears. The worthless released, the precious embraced, creating together this most loving space.
Many people are looking for a place to belong. They're looking for a place to connect to. And if they discover their own inner resources and strength that God gave them, it gives them an opportunity and a chance to flourish. And so what we've shared with our board at Reconciliation Services, that our long-term strategy is to not be here as an agency, but to actually see a functioning village emerge. That the very best thing that we can do is to be able to help stimulate and to serve others to the point where they can be able to find their work, their life work, so that they can begin to do that in this context.
I think that there are people here that care, that truly care and want to make a difference and are working to make a difference. And they're not just working on it from the outside, trying to, oh, we'll fix that. It's people working on themselves too and saying, you know, why am I having this reaction to this problem? How much of this problem am I contributing? You know, my attitude is contributing to it. So it's a really a deep-seated wanting to be creative and kind and willing to accept a lot of chaos in the process.
So as we look forward, I think it's the idea of less of me and more of we, So the idea of really promoting the sense of all of us together, finding our voices and doing our part.
There isn't much that we human beings can't do if we have the will to do it. And that's what's been lacking.
One of the things I don't think is in this area is a hope in tomorrow. And our children have to have a hope in tomorrow, because otherwise it doesn't matter what I do today. If there's no tomorrow, it doesn't matter. And so if you redo this for these kids, if I do this, no, it's when you do it. And I think we have to keep putting the future in front of them, that you have a future and you need to work on it, and we'll all work on it with you. I always say to people, the kid that could find the cure for cancer could be in this building, and we better make sure that this child gets all the opportunities they need. These kids have the hope to do anything, just like any other kid does. I want to do this, I want to do that. Not if I grow up. It's when I grow up, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer. But we have to provide them with the tools they need to do that. If we have a 15-year-old who says, I'd like to be a doctor, and he's reading on a 3rd grade level, that won't work. And we have to make sure he's reading on the right level when he gets out of high school.
My name is Nicholas Cooper, and when I grow up, I want to be an ER doctor.
I want to be an animator when I grow up.
I want to be a professional dancer.
A social worker.
Police officer.
My name is Mila Smith, and what I want to be when I grow up is a teacher. My name is Jada Davis. When I grow up, I want to be a vet and a ballet dancer.
I want to be a professional singer and a producer when I grow up.
When I grow up, I want to be an architect.
Equity is a superior growth model. When we begin to treat each other with this kind of an attitude of support and respect and where every person matters, and then that's carried over into the way that we begin to do business together, that's carried over into the way that organizations respond to each other, it causes this mentality of all the ships rising. So as we stop and we reflect upon the dividing line, and we think about the disparity, one of the striking issues is inequity. But if we begin to work together towards really beginning to work at this as individuals and as working this as agencies and businesses and the community, we can begin to have this feeling of village that transcends any particular group so that all the ships rise together.
Thank you so much. It's a wonderful time and an opportunity for us to be able to gather this evening and be able to celebrate what we've done up to this point.
This is a place where people are from here and they live here and they love it here, but not a lot ever seems to change. We've got the same lines of demarcation that have been scarring us up for 60 years. We have the same systems that are keeping people poor and keeping people powerless. And powerlessness becomes a physical thing. You can feel it settle in the hollow space between your shoulder blades, and it's like lead. But what we did in this campaign, and what we're still doing, is we said we don't want to endure anymore. Because our people deserve better than this.
I live on the east side of Troost. Father David, he said to make a friend. So anyone from the west side who want to make a friend with an east sider, see me before you leave.
We've done something here nobody's been capable of doing. We have crossed every single religious, political, geographic dividing line in this city and said our people deserve better than this. And so we're now a force. That is power. That right there is power. Because they are not going to ignore our Bible verses anymore.
Joseph Jackson, the barber, we cannot forget who they are. Hopefully one day I will open a business again within the Troost area.
My wife and I are committed to Troost. We live off 28th and Troost.
Dr. King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And we really see the cap the rate fight as a critical bend in that justice arc, but we're not done. So this is one critical step in that fight. And when we win, we'll have moved us that much further to the justice bend.
The black community can no longer do nothing and allow us to continue to lose generation after generation after generation. We must stand up and do what needs to be done. You men are the first fruits of many who will begin a revolution in our communities to rebuild, restore, and re-engage.
Michael Long. Dwight Simpson.
And I look at my neighborhood and I look at my community, and that's the inspiration to me. Don't quit. Don't quit. Just keep going.
Bobby Thompson.
so we can reach down and teach others to stand. When others begin to stand, then our communities will improve. Our children will once again get their dreams, their wishes, and their imaginations back.
Took heed to our corner today. Footpaths worn and children played. Look and see what Troost became. Creation together, again aflame.